Disney Plus brings movies, shows, nostalgia, and joy right to your screen. This podcast brings reactions, recaps, discussions, and interviews right to your mouse ears. Scott Murray, Regina Davis, and Nathan Chick are here to enhance your Disney Plus experience and take your Disney fandom to a new level. Welcome to the Disney Plus Streamcast.
Hello and welcome to the Disney Plus Streamcast. I'm Scott Murray and I'm here with Regina Davis.
Hello, hello.
I'm so glad people are here to check out the show today because we're getting to talk about another live-action Disney movie or adaptation of a Disney movie. We've done that one other time earlier this year with Lady and the Tramp. And I don't know about you, but this will be my second one of those. I have still not seen Beauty and the Beast or The Lion King. Of course, Lion King is it's still animation. It's just enhanced animation versus live action. But
right.
Have you seen either one of those?
I haven't. Lion King is not going to happen. Beauty and the Beast will probably definitely happen eventually.
So Lion King isn't going to happen because of the tough scene with Simba's dad, I assume.
Right, yes. There's no part of me that needs to see Mufasa dying in HD.
Okay. Makes perfect sense. Well, you didn't have to worry about something like that in Aladdin, at least. So we'll be talking about that, and we'll be talking about the first episode of Pick of the Litter, which is the documentary series on Disney Plus that follows some dogs that are training to become dogs that help others. Well, they're assistance dogs.
Yeah.
So, and it's really kind of interesting because, I've always wondered how that happens, what kind of training actually takes place, how you actually become an assistance dog. So before we get into some programming, we have to have news, and that means it's time for News with Nathan.
I could give you some news. That's all the singing you're getting. Improving songs is really difficult, actually, guys. Guys, how are you doing today?
So much better now.
I'm glad I could put a smile on your face. Oh my gosh, there's not a lot happening with news at the moment. Just little snippets here and there. I picked out the most succinct nuggets for us just to kind of run through and talk about a little bit. Let's start with Disney Plus leading all apps in the US with more than 30 million downloads in the last quarter. 34% of every app that was all apps downloaded from the App Store and Google Play, Disney Plus. How's about that for saturation? That's pretty good, huh?
That is pretty good.
That is pretty good. I mean, I sort of expected that, but wow, to such an extent.
Indeed. Obviously, Disney name, a lot of panache, a lot of feels associated with that. Also, the quality programming. Talk a little bit about programming. World According to Jeff Goldblum been renewed for a second season, another 10 episodes coming. Hasn't even hit the finale yet, which airs, I think, on the 24th.
What do you think? Have they said what that's going to be?
No terms, nothing like that's been discussed. Just that the statement that they released is that the Courtney Monroe, the president of National Geographic Global Television, said Jeff's genuine curiosity in the world makes him a natural fit for the National Geographic brand. There is something special and intangible about Jeff, and his fascination with the world is infectious. We're thrilled to be able to share his humor and sensibilities to a broader audience on Disney Plus. So absolutely nothing, but still, it's more of what we're gonna expect. I think that we've had before. It's him being quirky and, being a daddy and doing his thing, and either you're there for it or you're not. I think we were a bit ambivalent, but still, I think we enjoyed it on the whole, right?
Yeah, definitely. Enough to, catch an episode every now and then. I enjoy the use of the word intangible to just sort of describe him.
And that's why I think he needs to do an episode on Jeff Goldblum.
That's a great idea.
Who am I? Who is this? Jeff Goldblum. Let's find out.
And he would.
Yeah, totally would.
Maybe Forky needs to do an episode on Jeff Goldblum. There'd be a lot of noises
crossover
backwards and
of a
forwards.
lifetime.
Yeah. Oh my word, yeah. Moving on with other content. Taika Waititi, as we know, did The Mandalorian, a couple of episodes in that, and IG-11 in that. Both Variety and The Hollywood Reporter have apparently confirmed, that he's in early talks to develop a new Star Wars movie. He's staying completely stum on the matter. On his Twitter earlier, he just posted a picture as the album cover, Fleetwood Mac rumors. But apparently they're chatting, along with, obviously Kevin Feige. There's a couple of people they're talking to. Ryan Johnson still got his hand in the Star Wars universe. When Variety reached out and had a word with him, he said, "Oh, I don't know anything about that, but Mandalorian was my chance to work with some stormtroopers." But when they pressed him and said, "But would you want to?" He said, "Obviously I would, but I'm going to just settle for IG-11 being the hero of the entire season."
There you go.
Yeah, and otherwise there is no comment. Something that Disney is commenting on, and quite fervently, with a lot of cease and desists, I should say, they've gone to Etsy and a bunch of their sellers, and they've been stamping out all those Baby Yoda or the child bootlegs, fan art, all those unofficial things, the knockoffs. They've got a big problem with them, and so they've been slapping them with the lawsuit type things left, right, and center. And perhaps that's too heavy a word. So, if you want your Baby Yoda, I want Fruit Gummy decal for your laptop, you're just going to have to go to one of those other sites that's doing it, that hasn't been hit with a cease and desist, all over AliExpress, all over Wish.com, or whatever it is. There's no shortage of that. No shortage of that as well from Bob Iger. He was quite quick to post on his Twitter before the NFC Championship game a picture of Baby Yoda holding a Packers football, saying, "Game time, let's go Packers." I don't remember that being canon anywhere,
well,
but I guess,
well.
Yeah, I'm going to say. But I guess when you're the big boss, you can do whatever you want. Maybe they gave him a little bit of carte blanche because, he did have a bit of a pay cut last year, apparently. That's reported by the SEC. 28% pay cut. Oh my God, how's that man going to live? Because his salary last year was only 47.5 million. So, perhaps the Baby Yoda picture, the rights for that moment, that was just a gimme, like, go on, Bob, we know you're upset. We know you're crying into your 401k there. Let's just give him one, let him sort it out. I don't know. 47. Okay. I can't even.
Such poverty.
And 2 weeks' notice, when the lady playing Sandra Bullock's mom says to Hugh Grant, "I think it's immoral for one human being to have that much wealth. I don't know how you sleep at night." And he goes, "Well, I have a machine that makes the sound of the ocean."
Yep.
In other memeable news, just to throw this out there, I saw this and my ears perked up. Apparently, Jerry Bruckheimer has signed on with Disney to produce another National Treasure movie. Mm-hmm. Does this mean more Nick Cage? We can only hope. We can only hope. I don't have any more information about that other than I saw that and instantly I thought Nick Cage, and that's that. In more serious news, I guess Disney is doing a bit of rebranding, and so they've dropped Fox from the names of their most recent acquisitions. So 20th Century Fox is now just 20th Century Studios, and Fox Searchlight Pictures is now just Searchlight Pictures. That makes no difference to us, other than I think they're just trying to dissociate themselves with other brands that still carry Fox.
They could have done 20th Century Mouse instead of Fox.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
20th Century Fox and the Hound.
Right. I see we're riffing there. Yeah. And on the eve of the London Toy Fair, I'm just gonna throw a couple of things out there. I like my toys and I like my Funko Pops and things like that. People on the old Marvel forums are going a little bit spare right now because there's a Funko out there from the Black Widow movie. I mean, and there's a couple of different ones out there that look kind of cool, showing Taskmaster with different weapons. You've got the other not daddy who isn't Jeff Goldblum, so David Harbour there squeezed into his Red Guardian costume. He's got his Funko Pop, which is probably a must buy. There's one of our girl, Miss Romanoff, and she's got a vial with a red liquid in it, and people are saying, "Oh my God, is that Pym particles? Is that super soldier serum?" I don't know. It could be your smoothie for all I care, but they look really cool, so you should check them out. But if you're looking for probably the best Funko Pop I've seen recently, that isn't like an Overwatch one or anything like that, because that's my jam. There's a new I Am Iron Man pop coming. It lands in April. It's Tony Stark in his busted armor on a base. He's kneeling on the floor. He's got blood streaming down his face, and he's about to do the snap.
Oh, wow.
Glow in the
It
dark
looks
arc
amazing.
reactor, glow in the dark Infinity Stones, $14.99 or so. You can pre-order lots of different places, but it looks really, really cool. And honestly, what better way to pay tribute to possibly the second best superhero after Captain America? I don't know. And that's all I got for you guys.
Loved it.
Speaking of merchandise, I saw that Build-A-Bear is going to start allowing you to go in and make a Baby Yoda.
Figures.
Yeah, that was only a matter of time, wasn't it? I think they just made the announcement, but just like everybody else, I think it's still going to be quite a few weeks before you're able to do that. And then my wife actually was looking at some of the T-shirts now on Disney site, and there's one of Nick Nolte's character, Quill. And it says, "I have spoken." So if you're one of those people that just love that character and loved saying that 15 times a day after we all picked up on that and tweeted it about another 30 times, you can now get a shirt with him on it that says, "I have spoken."
He was the unexpected one, of all the other characters, because the other guys I think have been featured in all the press coming up. So you saw the Gina Carano, you saw Giancarlo Esposito, and you kind of knew what you were getting with that. Werner Herzog, you were like, oh wow, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. But you say the Nick Nolte character, yeah, that one surprised me how much I ended up actually missing him at the end. I was like, oh man, for
right?
No, that was
God, what
tough.
A gut punch.
Yeah.
It was. All right, well, thank you, Nathan, for the news. And up next, we're going to talk about the first episode of Pick of the Litter and the just recently released on Disney Plus, the live adaptation of Aladdin.
That's coming up next on the Disney Plus Streamcast.
Well, ironically, if you missed last week's episode, I definitely encourage you to check it out because we talk about a Disney legend named Glenn Keane, who was responsible for creating and animating many of the memorable characters in the Disney catalog, including Aladdin. In fact, the day that I did that interview with him, that's what we went to see was Aladdin, as he was in town to get an award for all of his life's work. And just in time for us to record that episode, just a few days before that, they announced that the live adaptation of Aladdin was now available on Disney Plus. We've all had a chance to watch that, but before we get to that, we're going to discuss the first episode of another documentary series. This one is about little puppies that grow up and are trained to be assistance dogs, and it's called Pick of the Litter. And, of course, anything that involves puppies is going to catch our attention. So this was a no-brainer. We watched the very first episode, and I would say, as far as the first episode was concerned, I thought, really, there was a lot you learned right out of the gate, because, as I said earlier in the show, I've always kind of wondered about that when I see a dog out there helping somebody navigate through people and through the streets or whatever it is they're helping someone with. I've wondered what the process was for a dog to get that job. I've never really sought out the answer for some reason, but I've always wondered about it. So it was really interesting to see this, and see that there's these group of people that just train one after the other, and if they make it, they make it. If not, then they change careers.
You have
go
a
on
career
to do something
change.
else. Yeah, it's a career change. And one of my main takeaways, well, actually a couple of my main takeaways from this is, I give those people so much credit for taking time to do that for dogs over and over and over again. And at the same time, I have to say I could not do it.
Mm-mm.
There's no way I mean, I just get attached too quick, and it's tough enough when you lose a dog through natural causes or whatnot. I don't think I could allow myself to spend a limited amount of time with a dog I know I'm going to get attached to, and give that dog away to go somewhere else over and over and over again. I mean, that it not only takes a dedicated person to have the patience to do everything that's needed, but you also got to have some fortitude in there. You saw one lady who really struggles with it, but nonetheless, she does it over and over again because she loves doing it.
Yes.
God bless them, but I couldn't do it.
Not in a million years. But I mean, the rigorous process that they go to, you know, it makes a lot of sense. And I'd never really given it as much thought as watching this episode made me give it. But it really is imperative that these dogs are incredibly well trained and incredibly skilled, because they're making the decision of whether or not a certain situation is safe or if it's unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be a life or death situation. So they're incredibly particular about these dogs. You know, they're bred specifically for this. They go through one wave of trainers, then another, then another. It's just, it's unbelievable. But yeah, I don't think I could do it.
You're not giving yourself enough credit there, my dear. I really think that some of these people who were featured on that, man, they're an interesting bunch, huh?
Aren't they?
I don't know that they did a great job of it.
Some of them blew it.
Like, no, well, we
I
say
mean, all
that,
but one
right?
made it, right? In the first episode, all but one made it to the next phase. And the only
Yeah,
reason why one didn't make it was because it decided to squat in the middle of the street.
Yep.
Right. No, but I mean, I think they get recalled. That's what I mean, because I skipped there for that episode 2 and 3 and looked at the titles and like the synopses, and so I feel like there might be a bit more going on with that. But here's the thing: when I was watching that with these really interesting people, and I think there's two types of people in the world. I think there's people who like dogs, and then there's really weird people who love dogs. And I like dogs, but I'm definitely more of a cat bloke. And some people get super into it, Scott. I'm joking. So anyway.
No, you're right.
No, well, maybe, but still, I know who runs the show. So anyway,
Somebody mute his mic real quick.
Yeah, right. They were trying to set up the stakes, like, oh my gosh, this is so difficult. Like, you know, the behavioral wise, these guys have to be so on point. They can't jump around. They can't do their business anywhere. They've got to stop on a dime and all the rest of it. And it's got these people kind of going on about these dogs, kind of the way you see people in these other shows kind of talking about their creepy dog collection and stuff. And then, like, at the end, when they're like, it's time for assessment, those dogs, when they're like, they gotta stay down, they can't jump, they're jumping up like they're on moon boots, mate, like kind of just like high on drugs or something, like bouncing around like no one's business. And it's like, oh, they're doing great though, aren't they? What? I know what you just said. Same with that. Oh, what's he doing? He's chewing up a slipper. We're not allowed to do that. Oh, he's fine. How do you know he's fine? You don't talk dog. But they get a pass. Oh no.
Yeah,
man.
I think the first wave of puppy raisers are, I don't want to say the least important, but they're the least important. They're like, okay, here's this perfectly bred puppy. We need you to keep it alive and raise it loosely on these parameters. And then when it's of a relevant age, we'll take it and train it properly. Thank you for your service.
I'm not saying the least important, but you are.
You know, like, oh, he took a dump on the sidewalk. We'll still take him. We'll fix that. You guys just aren't good at this. But here's another puppy to try again.
Yes. So anyway, that's kind of how I saw that. It was a weird dog show for weird people who really love dogs, who want to see other people like that.
We're looking at you, Mary Kay.
And just, you know, oh yes.
So
yes. God bless her.
So Mary Kay, out of all of the dog trainers, in the second episode, which I pushed forward to because I wanted to sort of see what the next level was, she is at 26 puppies that she's raised. That is unbelievable. And she's absolutely the most psychologically bizarre out of all of them. There's not really a fully normal one in the bunch, but she's full-blown crazy. I love her, and she's doing something that's really great. But she frightens me a little bit.
Well, you know, you have a crazy cat lady. I guess you can have a crazy dog lady.
Yeah. This is Yeah, that's pretty close. But one thing I'll say, I thought we've talked about how I'm just really going to avoid most dog related Disney things because they're always going to try to, tug at your heartstrings. I sort of assumed that this one was going to be safe because it's a happy premise. These dogs are getting trained to, help blind people. It's awesome, it's heartwarming, it's wholesome. Episode number 2 is called Recall Day, where it's the episode where everyone who's spent roughly 18 months raising these dogs gets to say goodbye. And they're tearful, and some of them are sobbing. I was crying. I thought I was going to throw up because you see one person have to part with their dog, and then you have to do that 5 more times over the course of the episode. And every time I felt like I was about to recover, you see, somebody that had their puppy and then their kids are also there. Their kids are crying because they're losing basically the family dog. It was just, if you're really interested in the training aspect and not the sobbing aspect, skip episode 2, go right on to 3.
Okay.
Because it's
Noted.
a nightmare.
I mean, I guess you have to show that, though, because it does show you that, that there are people that are, like we were just saying, it's going to take a certain kind of person that's going to be willing to deal with that. Because I've had people talk to me sometimes. They say, it's always challenging to go get another dog because when one passes, it's so difficult. And that is absolutely 1,000% true. Brutal, brutal, brutal. Or any pet. Not just dogs, but I'm only speaking from dogs because that's what I've had. And what I usually tell people is, as far as why I have, is because, there's lots of reasons. One being that, there's lots of dogs out there that need good homes that, that you can provide. And if you loved, your last dog with everything, you can transfer that into a dog that will definitely benefit it. You just got to get past that stage of, you sometimes if you do it too fast, you feel like you're replacing them, and that's not really what you're doing. So, I mean, that's hard enough. And so it's even harder to know that, you bring this new little puppy home and know that, after a few months, you're going to have to give it away.
And know that they're just out there, alive, living their life somewhere else without you.
Without you, yeah.
Heck no.
I mean, I guess you have to show. I mean, that's an important part of the documentary, though. I will say it's tough to see. I mean, because otherwise you might think, they'd go, okay, bye. I think it'd be worse if they didn't give a crap.
Yeah, true.
But you have to. I mean, I think it's important to show that it's a tough job, like we all would assume. But I'm glad you pointed that out because I think I will skip to 3.
Holy cow! Yeah, it's awful.
I do appreciate some of these documentaries that either put the spotlight on something that I've wondered about for a while and never really looked into, or just something maybe like in Jeff Goldblum's series, something that I hadn't thought about diving further into, like shoe conventions. Mm-hmm. This was definitely something that I think was worth a documentary series to learn about how this is done. And then I think it's just another example of just one of the many things that dogs do for people. That's going to wrap up our discussion on that so that we can move on to our featured discussion, which is the live adaptation of Aladdin. And I think some of this is where you find the people who are much more critical about this and maybe less critical. I mean, I do have friends that love Aladdin that loved it, and I have friends that didn't like it at all. And I think sometimes it just depends on how much it means to you to have things mirrored in the live version and how much liberty you think it's deserving to have in this live version. For me, I've seen Aladdin, I believe, once, and that was several years ago. So I didn't really have a whole lot of attachment to what I thought I would see in the live version. So really, I mean, I just took my basic knowledge of the story and the characters and just watched. I mean, I knew Will Smith was going to play Robin Williams' character and how unique that was going to be. So I don't really have a whole lot invested in a comparison, but I think visually, I think it was a pretty cool adaptation considering what all they had to do. I think it definitely felt like Aladdin. It felt like a Disney movie, and it felt like, if I was dropped into this story in real life, I think that's pretty close to how it would look. What did you all think, just as far as a live version of the story?
As far as it, adaptation-wise, I thought it was pretty good. But I think I may have had the opposite problem that you had, because I've watched the animated version very recently, and while it didn't take away from it because, I was comparing it frame by frame, it's just the animated Aladdin is so incredibly magical and astonishing to see. It just seemed a little bit lacking in accomplishing that in live action. Now, obviously that's a insane undertaking, and they did do an impressive job, but I still prefer the animated just because it's got more magic.
My attachment to Aladdin was only through video games. So 15-year-old me on my Sega Mega Drive, or Genesis if you're American, and my Super Nintendo, two of the best platformers on that system were Aladdin. I didn't need to know anything about the movie to enjoy that. They were just great platform games, one by Dave Perry, who went on to do Shiny, and one by Capcom, and they were fantastic. And, the actual movie itself had no interest, none at all. So obviously I'd watched a little bit of it since, but just a little bit because, raising kids, you're kind of around. So I went into this one thinking, well, I like Guy Ritchie movies, so I'm going to watch this, and then I'll watch the animated afterwards. And I will say, coming from one to the other, that Aladdin, the animated one, is part of that Disney Renaissance with the animation all the way, like classic animation, because like in some of those scenes, like with the Prince Ali, that number, with the One Jump Ahead number, the bazaar, for example, give you an example, the bazaar, it's empty. There's not a lot that happens in the bazaar compared to you look at the Guy Ritchie version, and oh my God, between the sets and the scale, the camera obviously on the crane like swirling around. I think Gemma Jackson from Game of Thrones did the sets on that one. You look at the extras everywhere, and it's a really immersive kind of world. I'll give you another example. If you like your video games, like playing Assassin's Creed, like the first one back in the day, or even Assassin's Creed 2, like you really get this feeling in this super vibrant world, and everything's going on in it. And certainly visually, it does stack up. It looks amazing. I've got no problem saying that it is just everything I think Aladdin should be visually. It looks fantastic.
It's interesting you said video games, because the other thing I thought of too when he was jumping around and going backwards and forwards and around, I was thinking of Prince of Persia.
Prince of Persia.
I knew you were thinking Sands of Time. So was I.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. But that's so weird that you say that, because I felt like it was so small and so claustrophobic. That's so weird. So I don't know what happened in my brain, but man, interesting.
Let's talk about the casting a little bit. Again, not having watched Aladdin a bunch. I mean, I know what Aladdin looks like. I can visualize him and all the other characters, Jafar and Jasmine, so it's not like I didn't have a frame of reference. But I'm not so attached that I was probably going to be overly critical. I think the biggest thing for me was how I was going to feel about the genie. And I think as far as the genie's concerned, it's an adjustment just because, it doesn't matter what they did. They weren't going to be able to replicate Robin Williams. Will Smith was an interesting choice. It took me a little getting used to, but then all the little creative things they did with his words and visuals, I kind of dug that the more and more he did it. And then I really did like him later as the character, as he was kind of the conscience of Aladdin a couple times. And I really liked the tie-in from the beginning of the movie, where he's on the ship, and then we see the tie-in of how that all took place at the end. I really did like that. I liked Aladdin. I thought Aladdin was fine. I liked Jasmine. It's interesting, Jafar I kind of struggled with a little bit, just because, I just think that, in the animated version, he just has so much more of an evil look, whereas with this guy, it was more of an evil tone. I mean, I truly believed he was evil. I believed he was who he said he was. But, Jafar in the animated version, has kind of a Darth Vader presence about him. This guy did not. But, I thought he was good for being cast in the role. And the only other thing is I think the bigger adjustment is, of course, the parrot. It's not going to be Gilbert Gottfried. In this case, it was Alan Tudyk, which was an interesting choice. And I guess they just felt, well, if it's real life, he's going to have to sound like a normal parrot and not like Gilbert Gottfried. Probably needs to sound like a normal parrot. So So overall, I think the main casting was pretty good. I mean, I don't look at really any of them and go, wow, there's nobody else that could have done that. But I think they all fit the characters' descriptions relatively well. Jafar was probably the one that had the biggest disconnect, but again, I thought he was good as a bad guy as far as the actor was concerned.
I struggled with Jafar the most also. I didn't think he had really any presence whatsoever. I really only, recognized him as the villain because everybody told me that he was. It was just sort of weird because I was just like, Sultan's too tall, Jafar's too short. But also Jafar just seemed sort of, I don't know, just a little bit subdued and kind of weak. Just without, because you didn't really ever feel him using his, presence as a powerful thing until he was wielding his magic. Whereas Jafar, the second he walked through the door, the climate of the room changed.
Yeah.
And so that just wasn't a thing that really happened. I was curious how they would handle Iago. I thought it was really great. I was really happy with it because, he still spoke. His character was still functionally the same as it was in the animated version, but, tailored to make sense in a live action world. And I thought that they did a great job. I also thought it was incredibly cool when he turned into a giant bird.
Yeah.
That was epic. I loved that part. I thought Jasmine was great. The Sultan, he was fine. Aladdin looked like Aladdin. He sounded like Aladdin. It was a little bit uncanny sometimes, but something that drove me nuts was he kept trying to kind of pull a face throughout the entire movie that was sort of reminiscent of a facial expression that he had pretty often in the animated version. And I was just trying to, in my head, I was like, you don't have to do that, dude. We know you're not a cartoon. Like, you don't have to you don't have to do that. I can see you physically moving your mouth weird and thinking about it consciously right now. And I need you to not do that. I need you to focus on acting and singing because Jasmine is incredibly good singer. He's good, but just there was like a talent gap there. So whenever they were singing a duet together, it was just like, wow, Jasmine is really hard carrying this performance right now. But yeah, casting wise, I think it was great. I liked Will Smith as the genie a lot more than I thought I would. Because I did wait a long time to watch this adaptation. And so Will Smith being the genie had sort of been memed to death on the internet already. But it was all right. I liked it.
Will Smith, I think, was the biggest surprise for me. In fact, I would say all the CG characters, whether it's, Abu or the magic carpet even, they had a lot of life to them, which is something you don't always say about CG characters,
I was going to say the magic carpet kind of reminded me of Doctor Strange's cape.
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't optimistic after the trailer because I think the way we felt about, Will Smith as the genie is the way a lot of people felt about Sonic the Hedgehog in that trailer. It was kind of like an abomination sort of thing almost. And, surprisingly, had a lot of depth. I actually liked his interactions a lot more. Like you say, the fact that he got to be the moral compass. I don't think all his lines were I know they gave him a lot of room in the movie to improvise and play around. And I would probably say that because of that movie runs a little too long. So he does outstay his welcome a little bit. Whereas, with Robin Williams as the genie, I guess, he did a whole bunch of stuff. He riffed a bunch and then they just took the best bits and animated it and bang, away you go. And it keeps it going along at a real snappy pace because, that's the temperament, that's the personality. And you don't really get that with the Will Smith genie. He's a lot more reflective. He's a lot more contemplative. As far as, the Jafar thing goes, and I know that's been, a bit of a hot button for people comparing the two. I get what they were trying to do. And I know that they kind of gave him a bit more backstory and tried to kind of get his motivations out there a bit earlier. So he almost had this kind of, I don't want to say anti-hero kind of thing, but you kind of got the feeling that, he had his own story, he had his own path. But to your points, I think, the best Disney movies have the best villains, and they have the best villains because they're the heroes of their own story. People have said that over and over again. But when you look at Maleficent, you look at the Evil Queen, You look at Ursula, all these bad guys. I mean, they really inhabit that role, and Jafar is one of them. The second you see him, you're like, oh boy. And I don't think that's. I know some people have said, well, that's racial stereotype or whatever, with the beard and the eyes and the nose and all the rest of it. I don't think it is. I think he's just drawn with such presence. Like, he towers and he glowers.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really get that with Marwan Kenzari. You get the kind of glowering a little bit. You get the intensity in his eyes, but he doesn't have the physicality to carry the evil off. Mm-hmm. And I feel as well.
He lightly broods, but he's not really imposing.
Right, he looks like he's like the bad guy in a telenovela.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's spot on.
And I don't mean to disparage him because he's won a Golden Calf. He's a really solid actor. He's got chops. People really like what he does, and this was supposed to be a big breakout role for him. I don't know, just like him, like a lot of the rest of the cast. Just thought it was a little bland. It was a little safe. All right. But Will Smith, I think, carried it, and I was really surprised to say that Will Smith in the CG carried the movie for me in terms of like characterization.
All right. Well, the next thing up is the music aspect of it. I was especially thinking about Nathan and knowing he's not big on musicals. I would say I'm in a very similar boat, and that's why I don't have a whole lot to say about it, because I think, if you love musicals and you love that aspect of film, and you've watched, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, you probably have a lot more clout than me to actually talk in depth about it. I'll just say that overall, nothing really bothered me outside of just, the whole jarring aspect of somebody being in the middle of something and breaking out into song. It was like when Jasmine's, walking with these two guards and she starts singing, and I'm like, well, I wonder what those guys are thinking if this is real life, she's just breaking out in song as they're leading her down the hallway. But I mean, there was nothing wrong with the way anything was sung. I thought the last song where Jasmine really breaks free, takes her stand and, decides to see if she can get everybody to turn against Jafar. There was that seemed a little bombastic to me. It was almost like a little over singy, a little over dramatic. But outside of that, I thought the music was fine. I thought A Whole New World was pretty good. And it was kind of cool if you've seen that, not only on Aladdin, but even on PhilharMagic. You see that flight on the magic carpet singing that. I think overall the music was fine for me, except for that last song I thought was a little overdone, but overall fine.
I think I'm in the same boat. I thought it was okay. I thought they did a pretty good job of sort of weaving in the original music that people really love, but still making it different, changing some of the verses, extending some things, shortening some others. That last song was a lot. I also am not entirely comfortable with musicals just because of that exact thing, how weird it is when someone breaks out into song and everyone pretends like it's not happening. It was made even more bizarre in this one when, she is walking with the guards, immediately starts belting something out, and then people just start disappearing.
Yeah, that threw me too. Yeah.
Right. And I get it. She's got a musical number coming up and you need to, get everybody out of the way so that it's not even weirder than you've already made it. But now it just looks like she's vaporizing these people with the sound of her singing voice, like some sort of weird, like Arabian black canary. And I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. But, the other music where, they were trying to nod to the original, I thought it was fine. I thought it was cool. It's just not that important to me.
I mean, I even kind of dug Will Smith's version of Friend Like Me was fine. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was kind of cool how they ended it, right during the credits. Another round of that was really cool. I kind of dug that too.
And the Ali Ababwa entering the city, his big grand entrance, that was a great musical number, just in general. Objectively, it was good.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite moment with the songs, is whenever they're singing Prince Ali and they stop and Will Smith's chatting to the Sultan, he's shouting at him, he's like, we're waiting for you. And everyone's just pausing, waiting for him just to start tapping along with the beat again and just go into the big final number. Yeah, much the same way. It's really hard to. Okay, so I don't like musicals, especially when they're overly Broadway with the overly Broadway singing and the jazz hands. Don't like it. A good song is a good song, though. Can't take anything away from that. Like, I'm not a huge Bob Dylan fan, but you hear some of those songs and you're like, oh my God, you don't have to like Leonard Cohen to hear Hallelujah and think, oh, that's
Right.
amazing. That's one of the greatest songs ever. Even though you might hate the rest of his back catalogue and you don't like him singing it, it's a great song. And I feel that way about some of those. So Friend Like Me is cool, and Whole New World, it's hard not to get sort of swept up with that, even though it's got that kind of duet type thing, going on at the end, which can be a bit schmaltz. Arabian Nights, I really like that. I will tell you though, the weakest song on that original song from back when is One Jump Ahead, for me at least. But having to watch that as part of like the action sequence, just extended, hyper extended, and then Guy Ritchie does that thing where he's shooting in half speed and speeds it up, and then he shoots in double the frames and then slows it down, so it looks all kind of Charlie Chaplin vaudeville and sometimes as well. It's really jarring, and it's not a good song, and it kind of takes you out of it. I'm just waiting for it to end at that point. Yeah, and it should be a really kind of like I will give you an example. If you watch one of his other movies, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, the beginning bit where they're running, they're on the run from the law, and they've got their suitcase of dodgy goods, and they're kind of making their way through the streets of London while being chased. It should have that energy and vibe, and it doesn't, even though the budget is 10 times bigger and there's so much more going on. And I'm just thinking, God, this stupid song, please just stop, shoot me now. I can't handle it. And the other thing as well, and I don't know if it's a cash-in, because, that song was done by, oh God, those dudes who did La La Land, Pasek and Paul. That song they did for Naomi Scott, Speechless. Now, I don't know if that was because they really liked the La La Land thing and they were trying to jump off of that, or whether they were trying to give, much in the way, Frozen gave our girl Adele Dazeem her awesome Let It Go shining moment. I don't know, that song, like I say, it's so out of place, it's so bombastic, and it's just not a good song. It's like, oh God, what are you doing? Like, you've been silent all the way through this. You kind of have this kind of like jokey old banter thing with your handmaiden, who wasn't in the original, but was a good addition. I liked her, Dahlia. And then all of a sudden, like, you get your voice back a little bit and you start talking to the guards. Like, but honestly, you'd think from the way she's singing that song, she's just going to tear down heaven. She's going to like rip the mountains asunder. And
she's
like,
already vaporized like 12 people, and now she's throwing herself around and just
seriously,
she's taking people out like Thanos in the Snap. Yeah,
right. Just singing from her diaphragm, making people disappear, and then she's just like, "Hey, change of plans," and you're just like, "Ugh."
Yeah, it's really, really jarring. And you say just the tempo, the pace of the movie between the slavish, and it is because it's a remake and they're trying to be kind of cool. Between trying to, like, have the obedience, like, hey, we have to have all these songs in, but we're also going to do this one too. Between the two, the juxtaposition is so jarring, it really throws me off, and it makes it ultimately less enjoyable than the original, for me.
The other scene that I really liked was when Genie was making Aladdin dance.
Oh yeah,
that was laughing
cool.
at. That was a nice. That was nicely done. Watching Will Smith just kind of do his thing, and then just watch how it affected Aladdin was really fun. All right, so overall, I'll just say, I didn't really rush out to see any of the live adaptations, as I mentioned early in the show. So before Lady and the Tramp, I hadn't seen any of them. And of course, Lady and the Tramp was straight to Disney Plus. So as far as the ones to hit the big screen, this was the first one I saw. And I didn't go primarily because, I don't have a huge attachment to Aladdin. I've only seen it once. And anymore, you just, with ticket prices being what they are, you just really have to want to go to spend the money. And I saw the mixed reaction because I knew, like Regina was saying, I mean, this is a pretty big task to bring these things to life. And I just didn't know how, what I would think of them. But I have to say, just from a sit down and watch entertainment perspective, I was surprised how much I really enjoyed it. I agree with Nathan. I do think it felt a tad long. I mean, when I remember bringing it up, seeing that it was 2 hours and 15 minutes, I was like, good heavens, what's going on here? But I didn't get overly antsy, but I did begin to notice when it started to feel a bit long. But that's probably one of my only real complaints, because as far as watching a live adaptation of a Disney film, I mean, based on everything I just said, I mean, I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed it, I'd say a lot, because it was just more than I thought I would, with my expectations kind of being pretty baseline. I was pretty much invested early on and had fun watching it all the way through. It wasn't perfect, but it was fun.
Yeah, I thought it was fun too. And while I didn't adore it or anything, I definitely don't feel like I wasted my time. It did feel like it was a little long, but I was, for the most part, enjoying myself. It did feel like they put a ton of money and effort into something that just didn't really do much of anything. But I do think, it's interesting to watch these things get turned into live action. That's just interesting. So I'll give anything like that one viewing, except for Lion King. But after that, it just has zero rewatchability value for me. So I'm glad I saw it. I probably won't see it again. But if you've got young kids, there's a lot of colors, there's a lot of sounds, and it's all right. I didn't hate it, but I don't need to see it again.
For me, it was like, especially compared to the original, if the original is like a really good meal, then the new one is like a buffet. It costs a little more than like a regular entree, and you get a lot more for your money. There's so much of everything. There's more music, there's more plot, there's more action, there's more of everything. But ultimately, all that extra just leaves you feeling a little bit unsatisfied at the end. It's not just wrapped up perfectly, the right amount of everything. It is a decent movie. It is a decent movie. There's a lot. There's way more movies you could watch that on Disney Plus right now that absolutely suck, and you're like, oh my god, why? This one is not a bad one. This is not one of those movies, especially if it's been a while since you've seen the original. You're probably gonna like it. You'll probably like it enough to say this is good. If you like Guy Ritchie movies, you're gonna like it. If you like Will Smith, you're gonna like it. If you like music, you're gonna like it until you get to the credits and you hear, yeah, Will Smith and DJ Khaled, another one, and then you're like, this goes off now, burn it all.
Right?
But
I thought my eyes were done rolling.
Like,
but
oh
no.
my god, that guy, seriously. I wish I could be the DJ Khaled of podcasting. I wish I could do nothing and get paid like that guy. Oh my god. But in any case, but yeah, it's solid. It's a really solid movie, and that's probably the nicest and the worst thing I can say about it at the same time.
All right, well, I think that puts a bow on today's Disney Plus Streamcast. We spent some time, obviously, today on a live adaptation, but next week we are going back to animation, an animation classic. And this time we're talking about something that we've all seen, but we're going to go back and rewatch it because we enjoyed it so much the first time. We're going to talk about The Emperor's New Groove next week, but we're also going to take a look at that new series that just dropped, The Diary of a Future President. That's what's on the agenda for next week, so I hope you'll join us then. In the meantime, don't forget you can check out all of our episodes on DisneyPlusStreamcast.com. You can also reach out to us with your thoughts on anything, or even if there's something you'd like us to talk about, feel free to do that too. We're also on Twitter at DisneyPlusCast. And just like many other podcasts, you can find the show on popular podcast hubs like Spotify and Apple and Stitcher if you want to subscribe to the show. And if you've enjoyed what you've heard so far, or you appreciate the variety of opinions that come into the show just between the three of us sometimes, feel free to share your thoughts and let people know what you think. And of course, that lets us know what you think as well. Well, thanks for joining us for today's episode. We look forward to having you back next week for another episode of the Disney Plus Streamcast.